Okay, time for a new video, and whether you are somebody new to my channel or you are returning to my channel to watch this video, it is greatly appreciated. As always, I'm filming this video in one go, so if I stumble over my words moving forwards, apologies about that. And also, if the quality of this video is fairly poor as well, if there's any lag, anything like that at all, sadly it cannot be helped, and hopefully it is not too much of an issue for you. This is yet another Eurovision related video here on my channel, and part 3 of this little series where I go through your answers to my questions. And as I've already said in the previous 2 installments, I am very overwhelmed and extremely grateful by the amount of responses that I received, and it's definitely made me think about doing more videos like this in the future, where this channel can hopefully become a bit more of a collaborative experience for us all. And in part 1 I went through plenty of answers, and in part 2 I went through plenty of answers, and now I've got the last few answers to go through. So without further ado, I'm just going to get straight into it, but I will say, as always, there are links in the description to my other social media pages. Check them out if you so wish. I did receive a few answers on Twitter as well, and I've got those loaded up ready to go. And at the end of this video, I will just be going through a few other little bits and pieces about this year's upcoming Liverpool staged competition as well. So stick around for that if you're interested. So I think I got up to Mr. Expa last time. Thank you very much for your responses. So question 1 was, if Eurovision was in your country, where should it be staged and why? You're from Greece, and you don't think there's any place better than Athens to host a competition, so you'll just go with that. It was in Athens, of course, back in 2006. And something tells me if it was in Greece again, it would be at the very same venue. I don't think a new one has been built since that's even better, so I think it would be Athens again. If Sweden won, how would you feel about it and why? For you, Tattoo is, and most likely will remain, your #1 song this year. You don't see that changing anytime soon. Visiting Sweden is a personal goal of yours, so if Loreen actually ends up winning in May, it's very possible you'll combine 2 big milestones of yours and attend, hopefully, your first live Eurovision final in 2024 in Sweden. With that being said, and I agree with you here, and I've said this previously as well, you'll be a little disappointed if Tattoo wins by a long margin. The thing is, the juries announce their votes first, and something tells me Sweden could win the jury vote by a mile, which would mean the public half of the results feel a bit flat. Even if Finland won the public vote comfortably, with Sweden's already potentially massive lead, it makes the public votes feel a bit more dull somehow. We'll just have to wait and see. We've only got just over a month to go. Question 3, worst part of the contest. For you, it saddens you when a lot of politics are involved, and people don't vote with the song, and when countries vote for their neighbours every single year, cough cough, Greece and Cyprus. I suppose it is a bit irritating, I agree with you there, but I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Politics, I mean, it should stay well clear of Eurovision, but every year it plays some sort of part, whether that's a subtle part or quite a big part. Obviously Russia being banned, that was for a major political reason. I'm sure we'll have more incidences in the future. Number 4, thoughts on other content creators. You don't have a problem with mine, I thank you, or some other reaction channels. You like to see other people's honest opinions on the songs and how much they differ from your own. Thoughts on the fandom in general. For the most part, the interactions you've had on YouTube and Reddit have been nice, but of course there is a specific part of the fandom that you try not to pay attention to. For example, Loreen's 50 Days Left Till Eurovision video on the official Eurovision TikTok page is flooded with comments such as, "Sorry, what did you say? I only hear cha cha cha." Yes, I mean, that can be very irritating, but it's happened for years, hasn't it? It really has. You'll be watching a video regarding Estonia's entry, and you'll get people in the comments talking about Poland and Spain and Armenia, and I'm thinking, this is not the video to comment that sort of stuff. And even if you were commenting on the Armenian video or the Spanish video or the Polish video, even then it's probably still not the place to be posting such stuff. There's a lot of spam, isn't there? Anyway, question 6. One thing you'd change about Eurovision: you would oblige all participating countries to host a national final, even if it's between 2 songs. That's because sometimes I feel like if we were to vote, what they say wouldn't stand a chance. Yes, it would have been interesting if Greece had a national final this year, rather than a very odd internal selection setup, but there we are. Of course, there is that court case next month about it all. You prefer national finals over internal selections because you feel that people from each country would send to the competition the song they actually want to represent them. Your biggest grower is Armenia. Your biggest faller is Czechia. The cult classic From Your Nation. Interestingly, you don't mention a Greek entry. You mention Euphoria because it dominates radio stations and clubs in Greece, which is interesting. If you could attend a national final, it would be Melfest because it never disappoints you. And in terms of the quality of the participating songs, it's very high and you've always wanted to visit Sweden. You're thinking of moving there sometime in the future. Why not? Excellent. Thoughts on overrated, underrated? There's no right answer to that question. They're definitely overused. At the end of the day, as I said previously, people like what they like and don't like what they don't like. Absolutely. First Eurovision memory, it was 2006, you were 2 years old, and you remember eating pizza and watching Lordi perform. What a wild Saturday night that was. What a great first memory. The attitude towards Eurovision in Greece, and this is a question that's had the most fascinating answers to me. You say the majority of the population doesn't seem to care about it, except the day that the song for Greece comes out and the week the competition takes place. Although this year, Greece had its first Eurovision party in Athens, apparently, so I guess you have that going for you. Absolutely. It does seem, based on the responses I've got, which I know isn't that many, but it does seem as though Eurovision is actually viewed in a very neutral or negative manner in a lot of places. It's not often viewed very positively, which is interesting. Your soft spot country is Moldova. Most of the time they seem like they're participating for fun and not specifically to win the competition. Every year they're sending a fun, different sounding entry than other countries, and it brings you joy to see them do good. That's a very good pick. You don't follow Junior Eurovision, so you can't name somebody you'd like to see on the big ESC stage, but you plan to start watching it next year, or rather, this year, because of course it will take place in November in Nice, on the French Riviera. Ooh la la. Anyway, thank you for your answers. The next answers come from Betwixt Tales. And you're from Denmark. If Eurovision was in your country, you would say Copenhagen. Unlike last time, you now have a mega venue here, the Royal Arena. It all comes down to infrastructure as well. You need a city that can house and cater to a lot of people. And there are other great cities in Denmark, but you're not sure many of them have the hotels or hostels needed. Copenhagen is simply a beautiful city. Yes, it is. And it's a little bit disappointing, the venue that hosted in 2014. It looked a bit run down at the time. It still looks pretty run down to me. I'm surprised that that whole area hasn't been spruced up since Eurovision, at least not on the Google Street View images I saw recently. But yes, the Royal Arena in Copenhagen, that would be very impressive, wouldn't it? 4 times Denmark's hosted, 4 times in the same city, and 4 times in a different venue in that city. That would be quite impressive. Anyway, if Sweden won, how would you feel about it? You would feel annoyed, because Tattoo is basically Euphoria 2.0. You respect her creativity, but you don't get the hype the song is getting. Been there, done that. It sits in the bottom half of your personal ranking. Your favourite is Finland, as it is with me as well. The worst part about Eurovision, it starts too late. It doesn't come on until 9 o'clock in the evening in Denmark, 8 o'clock here. You don't understand why it doesn't start an hour earlier. I believe the majority of participating countries are in this time zone, and when I think 9 PM is late, I don't even want to think of how late it is for the viewers in Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia. It's half through the middle of the night before they get to see who won. Which is why the 2012 contest in Baku felt really flat, because it was obvious who was going to win, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. So everybody was exhausted and, I suppose, feeling a bit deflated because of what was happening. You also feel a bit iffy about the juries. If your country can't select a jury of honest people, then your country shouldn't get to have a jury vote. Well said. Thoughts on content creators? You don't have anyone who cares about Eurovision, which means you only have the online community. The more the merrier. It's really interesting seeing people outside ESC countries discovering the contest and hearing their non-biased opinions, as they don't have any horses in the race. You wouldn't be watching such people's videos if you didn't find enjoyment in the content creators create. Can any of us honestly say that we don't search for reactions to our nation's song? We all love to see how it is received by others. And you don't want to make content of your own, which is fair enough. Thoughts on the fandom in general? I feel like the fandom has gotten bad this year. It seems people are mistaking the right to express their opinion with the right to bully. You don't have to like every entry, but that doesn't mean you have to attack it every chance you get. It's like people forget there are real people behind every song and that they deserve being treated with humanity and decency. And should you dare to stand up to these folks, they come at you from every side. That's very true. I really don't like that at all. This is what I mean by petty arguments on social media. It's completely unnecessary. All you see is toxicity. That being said, you have no problem calling someone out on bad behaviour in one place and then like a comment they made in another. You don't carry grudges around. You then go on to say sometimes the internet really needs a red card system. Yes, indeed. One thing you change about the contest, you don't think it's right that 5 people have 50% of the say when it comes to voting. You would change it so it's a 25%, 75% split, which I think I've mentioned on my channel before, what that would be like and how good that might be in the long run. I don't know. We'll see if they change the rules at any point. Do you prefer internal selections or national finals? National finals for you, because you're from a country that has national finals all the time. When the song is supposed to represent a nation, the people of the nation should have a say in which one they like the best. National finals also help with building up the excitement. It makes the season last much longer. As for which songs you like the most, it's a mixed bag. You like Finland and the Netherlands? Well, hey, so do I. We're on the same page. Your biggest grower is Greece. The first time I listened, you weren't really into it. Now it's in your top 10. You also like Denmark's entry, your own country's entry, a lot more. It's a total bop. Belgium, on the other hand, you've gone off. You've grown bored of it. Interesting, because I think that one's growing for a lot of people. The cult classic from your country. Yes. Wie male bien rood will paint the town red by Birte Scheer from 1989. That's a great song. Oh yeah, there was this string of great feel-good bops from Denmark way back in the day. That's a great song. I know she's very famous in Denmark, and she was in DMGP loads of times. That's a great song, very feel-good. Get the orchestra involved as well. Worth watching that performance if you've never seen it before. That's a great song. If you could attend a national final, maybe Norway's, because you'd be able to understand what's being said. Other than that, Finland's. You really wish your own country would take notes of how they're doing it there. Interesting. How would you change DMGP? What needs to be done? Let me know. What are your thoughts on the terms overrated and underrated? Do you think the terms are valid? Every year, Sweden is placed #1 in the betting odds long before they've even selected a song because they are so overrated. And then there's a song like Armenia's last year. It was one of your favourites, but ended among the lowest in the final. Yet now, it's played everywhere. So underrated in the contest. Your first Eurovision memory. 1990, Lolly Devantia won DMGP with Hallo Hallo. Oh man, yes. I'm going to have to check out these songs again. What a cracking tune that is. And it's about trying to get someone on the phone but only getting the answering machine. For her staging, they had a giant red rotary phone. 5-year-old me thought it really stood out. They didn't bring the giant phone to Eurovision though. Great song though, finished in the top 10 I think. What's the attitude like towards Eurovision in your country? It's indifferent, leaning towards negative, but every year your national selection still has a huge live audience. So there are fans like you out there. Why the general attitude is leaning negative you couldn't say. A lot of people have a dated idea of what a Eurovision song is, a bit like the BBC for years. Their negative attitude stems from a belief that the contest is like in the 80s or 90s, while nothing could be further from the truth. And this is a question I'm going to ask you now, and maybe other people can answer this as well. If your country has a national final and you think that it stinks a bit, is the issue the broadcaster selecting these songs in the first place? Maybe they're not selecting the best that's on offer. Or is it more that just not many good songs are coming through for Eurovision anyway? Is it a case that the music scene maybe isn't that strong? I don't know. Or is it a case of actually a lot of artists don't want to enter the national final for fear of embarrassment or something like that? I'm interested to know. Anyway, soft spot country, it's Moldova again. Or rather, you have a soft spot for the ethnic sound a lot of their ESC songs have. I love that such a small country, which we know doesn't have the biggest means, still wants to join in and participate in the fun. Yeah, it's a bit like San Marino as well. And if you could have one junior Eurovision act perform on the ESC stage, which one and why? You mentioned how junior Eurovision essentially started in Denmark. The very first contest was in Copenhagen 20 years ago this year. Yes. Several of the kids who've participated in the MGP Kids in Denmark have gone on to be in the Adults MGP, and Gadegaard is one that springs to mind. She was the very first Danish representative in JESC. She had Suitcase in 2015, arguably should have won, Anti-Social Media did instead. And you mentioned how none of them so far have won. Give it time, somebody will. Thank you for your answers. Next up, it says here, David, but I know your name is David. So you're from Malta, but you've been in Belgium for a number of years now. Should Malta ever win the contest, and once the pigs stop flying, the likely venue is the Malta Fairs and Convention Centre in Takali. As for Belgium, you'd love it to be in Brussels again. Plus the best venue is called Palais 12. Petition to temporarily rename it to Palais 12 Points should it host the contest, ? I thought if Belgium won it should be in Antwerp, because that's where the biggest venue is. But it probably would be in Brussels anyway, I don't know. I'd love to see it in Malta. 2 times junior Eurovision hosts, so yeah, I think the venue you've suggested is probably the likely one, or they could build a new one. Who knows? If Sweden won, you wouldn't be bothered for once. It should send a shockwave to Ireland and shoot them into first gear, as Sweden will not only have equalised the number of victories, but Lorraine would be the second artist to have won the contest twice after Johnny Logan. Yes, the first female to do so, although technically speaking Johnny Logan has won it 3 times, because he also wrote Linda Martin's winning song. So if Lorraine comes back again in the future, having won this year potentially, maybe she should write a song for somebody else. Anyway, the worst part of the contest for you is the attitude of the hardcore fans. They can be overly toxic, and you're not a fan of political messages in the songs either. Thoughts on content creators? There are loads, but all of them are different. There's something for everyone. Smaller channels like mine are the most reflective of fans like you. Well, that's great to hear. One thing you'd change about the ESC, you've already touched on that, which is fine. Thoughts on the fandom in general, you've already touched on. One thing you'd change about Eurovision, live music rather than a click track. Yes, indeed. I mean, I can't remember if we've, apart from the orchestra, I don't know if we've ever had live instruments at Eurovision, really. I'm sure we have. Maybe I'm talking an absolute load of rubbish here. But whether that becomes a thing again in the future, I really don't know. You prefer national finals, but you just wish some countries opted for less contrived formats. Your biggest grower is the UK. Your biggest faller is Czechia. It's become a bit stale for you. Cult classic from Malta, Desire by Claudette Patch in 2000. Oh yeah, that's a pretty good song. I think she became a politician afterwards. And in Belgium, J'aime la vie for obvious reasons. That's a classic as well. You wouldn't attend a national final because you're not enough of a fan to travel anywhere just for a national final. Overrated or overused, sorry. Your first memory of Eurovision, watching it in 2004 in your grandparents' living room. I only remember a few brief moments. You were probably sent to bed early as you were 7, but as of 2005 you haven't missed a second of any main event since. Well, 2004 was Julian Ludwig for Malta, and I assume you were probably watching it in Malta. On again, off again. Thoughts on that song? A song like that these days would not do well in my opinion, but anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Attitude towards ESC. In Malta, you tend to love it, but like everything down there, for every one person who supports and loves something, there's another that's the complete opposite. In Malta, it's notably the underground musicians and culture snobs. In Belgium, it's quite neutral. Soft spot country. You find yourself rooting for the Big Five and Portugal because you grew up with the whole stigma of neighbour voting in the 2000s and seeing them flop more often than not, plus the fact that they pretty much represent Europe on the global scale, and junior Eurovision is not really your thing, which is fair enough. I have had a follow-up answer to something I addressed in my previous video from Nian, apologies. I thought you were joking when you said that you weren't a fan of Tattoo, which is your country's entry. And I don't know why I thought that. I thought it was just quite a surprising answer, because I've not seen many people say that they are not a fan of that song, especially somebody from Sweden. But you've said you weren't joking. You would be very sad and disappointed if Loreen won. You don't want Sweden to win at any cost. You want the win to actually be earned because you had the best song. Tattoo is nowhere near the best song this year. There are much better and more deserved winners. It's not even a mid-table song in your opinion. If Loreen and Diljau swapped songs, would people still be hyping Tattoo? Interesting. Interesting indeed. I've always thought about this. If the winning song was actually for another country, would it have won? It's interesting to think about. But anyway, thank you for that follow-up answer, and apologies for thinking that you were joking. Anyway, I have had... is this going to do anything? I have had a little more. Yeah, here we go. Minhinsti Dance gave me a follow-up answer, saying that Finnish people's attitude towards Eurovision. You should have clarified that we do see much more positive rather than negative journalism on Eurovision nowadays. Looking for things to whine about, even when there is none, is just some silly cultural thing, and every once in a while some grumpy people's opinions will be heard. But the broadcaster is doing good things for Finland in Eurovision, and especially young people are getting more and more interested, which is what really matters. Fantastic. Oh. Okay, yes, fantastic. I also had a comment, and I can't see it on my screen at the moment, so... Can I see it anywhere? I can't see it at the moment, but I did have a follow-up comment regarding Turkey in the contest and the election over there, and how the leader of the opposition wants Turkey to come back, which is fantastic. Anyway, how long is this video now? Not too long. I've got 2 more answers to go through. So, ESC Hayden, thank you very much. This is on Twitter now. So, if Eurovision was in your country, Cardiff. Wales has never hosted Eurovision, and you believe Cardiff is getting a new arena in the next few years. I believe so too. That would be very interesting to see. You'd be more than happy if Sweden won. There are actually several countries you'd be delighted to see win, more than ever, but you're totally fine with Sweden. Yes, it would be their 3rd win in little over a decade, but they work hard for it. You also mention how it might kick Ireland up the backside and motivate them to get their act together, potentially. Worst part of the contest, this has been mentioned by so many people, the toxicity. Snarky insults are of no help to anybody. Criticism is fine and should be welcomed, but only if it's constructive and given respectfully. Couldn't agree more. Thoughts on content creators. You think it's great that lots of people share their opinions on the internet. You do have your own YouTube channel. Personally, you prefer those who go into a little bit more detail, like WeeBlogs, Alicia, Michelle, and myself, to name a few. Thoughts on the fandom. Most of it is positive and understanding, but as with any large group of people, you'll get those few who have to spoil it for everyone else. One thing you'd change: in the semi-finals, if there are less than 16 countries, then there are just 9 qualifiers. So this year, for example, 9 would qualify from semi-final 1 and 10 from semi-final 2. That's an interesting thing to think about. Do you prefer internal or national finals? I think it's good there's a mix of the two. Different things work for different countries. Netherlands, Switzerland, and tentatively the UK seem to have found success with internal selections, so why take that away from them? Indeed. Your biggest grower is Portugal. Your biggest faller is Greece. Azerbaijan and Germany have also had recent healthy rises, while the Netherlands, Moldova, Czechia, and Switzerland are the more sizable falls. Cult classic, somebody else mentioned this as well, Gina G, who are just a little bit. That is a great song. Thoughts on overrated and underrated? I'll answer this one first. You don't use them. Using those terms is almost saying that I'm right and you're wrong, and it can come across that way, to be fair, which is why I'm very wary of using those terms as well. If you could attend a national final, you don't really know which one. Possibly a potential future UK national final. That's what you've touched on there. Your first memory of Eurovision, 2007. You thought Scooch were incredible. Whoa! And you quite liked Verka too. You didn't watch a grand final again until 2018, a few days after it took place, from the sounds of this. The first time you watched the contest live, not including 2020, was the first semi-final 2 years ago. And then you mention the attitude towards Eurovision in your country. And you say here, seeing as you live in the UK yourself, I'll tell you what it is in my family. Your mother is the kind that watches it in May, including the semi-finals for the first time last year, but doesn't really think about it again for another 12 months. My dad doesn't really know anything about Eurovision at all, to be honest, but my mother, I play her snippets of the songs. I haven't done it yet this year, but I usually play her snippets of the songs, and without fail she always says that most of them sound the same, but she'll have ones that stand out to her a little bit as well. So I do that. My brother follows it a little bit, my sister not really too much. What I do, and I've done this for years, is I ask my family, my brother, sister and my parents, to pick a number between 1 and however many countries are taking part, so 26, and they pick one at random, and then after the final is over I see which of my family members pick the entry that finished the highest, if you see what I mean. So that's a nice little thing that I do as well, sort of like a sweepstake thing, because nobody else in my family knows the running order really. What was I saying? Yes. Your mother listened to snippets of the songs the other day. Her favourite was Austria, and she branded the Swiss entry as a Greatest Showman rip-off. Really? Fair enough. Your dad and middle brother couldn't care less. Your youngest brother isn't too fussed, but his fiancée is into it. They actually got tickets for a semi-final 2 afternoon preview. You can't go yourself, and never in a million years expected anyone you knew to go. And it got you down a little bit. Ah, yes, well, if that was the case with my family, or any of my friends, I think I'd feel a little bit down and maybe a tad jealous as well. Thank you for that answer. And then you mentioned your soft spot country. There isn't one, or at least you like to think so. And if a junior Eurovision act should go to Eurovision, you say Freya Sky. Not only was she great, but because she was ill, you don't think she got the proper experience, and you'd like to see her perform at Eurovision unhindered by sickness. Yes, indeed. And then you follow up one of your answers by saying, you no longer think Scooch was incredible, it falls under the I was just 10 excuse. Ah, dear me. The runner-up in the national final that year was Cindy, and she had a ballad, and if that had gone to Eurovision, we might have actually done quite well for ourselves, and it could have turned around our fortunes. But alas, the last answers come from Armando on Twitter. Thank you very much. You're from the Netherlands. If Eurovision was in your country, you'd have it at the Ahoy in Rotterdam again, because it's not far from your house, and there aren't that many suitable locations in the Netherlands. If Sweden won, you'd be content, but it would be a bit of an anticlimax, of course. You don't like the dodgy jury voting. A lot of people agree with you there. Thoughts on other content creators? Most of the channels seem to like every song. There are not so many channels like mine. I'm very genuine and tell my honest opinion. Well, I thank you very much for that. I think I touched on this previously. Sometimes some reactors, some other YouTubers and what have you, I do think their reactions are a bit exaggerated. Whether they're false or not, I don't know, but I think sometimes they are a bit on the exaggerated side. You can't like everything, you know? Thoughts on the fandom in general. Twitter is full of toxic people, but you don't mingle in it, which is fair enough. One thing you change about Eurovision, you change the jury voting. All 5 jury members must be separated so they cannot influence each other. And there must be a person from the EBU to check if everything is going as it should go. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there probably is. I really don't know how it all works, whether all of the jury voters are in the same room at the same time and they're looking over each other's sheets like this, like they're cheating in an exam. I don't really know what the hell happens there. It'll happen again this year, though. Oh, yes, this jury member voted upside down. This jury member posted their results, their marks or whatever on social media. Fools! It'll happen again this year, I'm sure. You prefer national finals. A national final would not work in the Netherlands, you think, which is interesting because I think last time out, one of the responses I got was from somebody who said it's time the Netherlands had a national final. So that's a very interesting topic of discussion there. Will there be a Dutch national final in 2024? I don't know. If not, just internally select within temptation. Thank you very much. Your biggest grower is France. Your biggest faller is Ireland. I don't know if you are mentioning 2 people here, but cult classic in your country. You've put Ruth, the 1993 representative. That was a great song. And then you've mentioned Hemel en Aarde, which is Edcilia Romblay's entry in 1998, and that is an absolute corker of a Eurovision song. That's an example of a grower over many years. I was too young to really remember the Birmingham contest in 1998, but that song, Hemel en Aarde, that's a song that has grown on me over many years. It's now absolutely one of my favourites from that competition. If you could attend a national final, you say UMK, they know what they're doing. Thoughts on overrated, underrated? You think you can use it, but a lot of people use it as if everyone thinks that way. Your first memory of Eurovision, 2006. You were at your friend's home, you were supposed to sleep, but you watched it anyway and saw Lordi win. Interesting that a lot of people's first memories is Finland winning in 2006, which makes me wonder if a lot of new Eurovision fans, their first Eurovision memory could be Finland winning this year. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? And it would also turn them on to pina coladas. First Eurovision memory we've done, just did that. Attitude towards Eurovision in your country. 10 to 15 years ago, it was at its worst. It was seen as disgraceful. Ever since Anouk took part, it started to shift more and more. And now, also after hosting recently, it is more and more seen as a nice thing to watch. It's talked about a lot more in a positive way. But I've also had a few responses saying that the attitude towards Eurovision in the Netherlands is a little bit mixed. Interesting. You have a soft spot for Greece, and you're not aware of Junior Eurovision enough to answer the last question, which is fine. That, ladies and gentlemen, is it. All of the responses I received. I should say, and I don't know if you're going to be watching this video, but I had a message on Twitter from Galaxy Rich. Can I still answer my questions, or is that too late? Unfortunately, you are a bit too late, but send your answers over anyway, because I will read them out in a future video. I don't know when, but believe me, I will see them and talk about them in a video. So you're very welcome to do that as and when. I have no idea why Twitter is showing me a picture of a dog, but there we are. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, a few more things to mention away from the answers before I wrap up this video. So yes, I know Nyan said that you are not a fan of Sweden's entry at all, but here in Britain, this was in a newspaper recently, I think I mentioned it previously as well, Sweden is Bookie's Eurovision choice. So there you go, Lorraine is being mentioned quite a bit, it must be said, regarding Eurovision this year here in the UK. People know who she is. Another Eurovision win would take Sweden to 7, matching Ireland's record haul. This article here, May Muller, our entry, the UK's entry, has admitted she initially felt sick on discovering she will be singing last at the event. She's now raring to go. Going last is actually a blessing, and what an opportunity. And also, she has come under fire recently, May Muller. Absolutely ludicrous shite, because apparently she criticised our former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And the media have just turned on her a little bit. For crying out loud, who cares? Who cares? But the media, certain areas of the media, certain right-wing areas of the media, it must be said, they have leapt on it like flies to a turd, and they have been criticising May. And then you've got people saying, well, this will certainly damage her chances of doing well. I hope she flops on the night. Wah, wah, wah. And I'm just thinking, shut up, you absolute fools. Anyway, the last thing I'll mention here, I didn't even know this, but it says here, there's a picture of Paddington Bear, we'll ignore that, but it says right here, not that you can really see it at all, but it says, the Eurovision Song Contest in May will, for the first time in its history, feature a thrust stage, usually used at rock concerts. Organisers say Liverpool's arena will have a 950 square metre main stage and a 500 square metre green room, along with more than 2,000 specialist lighting fixtures. So there's going to be a bit of thrust, you know what I'm saying, in Liverpool? Very saucy if you ask me. But there we go, it's going to feel like a rock concert then. Apparently so, I didn't know this. They have started building the stage in Liverpool as well. I've seen a few photos. And yeah, it's going to look really good when it's done. Of course, rehearsals will be here before you know it. Unbelievable. But there we are. Today is also Graham Norton's 60th birthday. So there you go. Anyway, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'll say it once again. Many, many thanks for your responses. And to that chap on Twitter, because I assume you're a chap. Apologies if not. But yes, I will see your answers if you send them over, and I'll address them in a future video. Anyway, I'm rambling now like an absolute prat. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I'll be back with more Eurovision-related videos very soon. Bye for now.